Good evening, everybody. As I said, yeah, so much about all the classes I would have done in economics, micro, macro, public finance, whatever. Yeah, I've actually switched my roles now. I happen to simply open and close the doors at the Alliance Manchester Business School in Manchester, and I teach biology. So maybe that's the wrong audience. No, he actually very accurately defined my role. As he said, I'm the MBA Programs Director. And obviously, as such, my responsibility is over our portfolio of MBA programs at the Alliance Manchester Business School. So that's our full-time MBA program. That's also our suite of part-time Global MBA programs. So that is our Global MBA program, which we've been delivering around the world since different permutation and names since around 1992, 1993, when we started delivering it at the time it was in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Jamaica, and since we've actually been developing it in many different guises over the years. We've been here in Dubai, for example, now for 15 years, as all our collateral says it. But yeah, so I've been looking after that program, and indeed as well different pathways that we actually offer. So we also have an accelerated finance pathway through our Global MBA program. We also have what we call the John Kelly Manchester Global MBA, which we offer in partnership with the Kelly School of Business, part of Indiana University. We also have collaborations with Tongji University in Shanghai, collaborations with Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Sao Paulo in Brazil. And then also we launched quite recently our Global Executive MBA program. So what I wanted to do here was just trying to perhaps get you a better idea about what is an MBA about. I know that the vast majority of you are people that are looking at doing perhaps MBAs. Some of you might be new students. Some of you, I think there's a few alumni here. So can you raise your hands, any alumni around here? Lovely, and not only alumni, but you're even having a bit of an input as well as teaching assistants as well. Lately as well here in the Middle East, which is great. Okay, so can I assume everybody else, is there any current student here? One? What's your name?
Maria.
And what semester are you in, Maria?
First one.
First semester as well. So you started in January, yeah?
Yeah.
In the Global MBA itself, yeah? And then I assume then everybody else here are people about to start in July or prospects or?
Okay. Starting in July.
You're starting in July already. Okay, so that's a great opportunity then for myself to introduce myself to new students and indeed to give an idea of what an MBA is about. I will not be using any slides or anything. I just want to keep it as informal as possible and perhaps leave it open to any questions that you may actually have about what an MBA is in general. Indeed, any of our offerings. Also, hello to everybody that are attending from other places, either here in Dubai or other parts of the Middle East. But let me start. Okay, perhaps I'm sorry, Maria, for picking on you, but you are already a semester one student. Can you tell us what an MBA is? Beyond the obvious, a Master of Business Administration.
Let me tell you something. I was pushed to do the MBA by my husband. He's an alumni. So he did his MBA 10 years back. I was just looking for transformation, for a bit of change. And I needed that because now in every international company or any company, you need an MBA or this passport for a transformation. And this is why I'm here. I'm learning lots of things. Lots of very good things which I wasn't expecting, like I would be learning it. In the first semester, especially the leading and managing course, which was all about financialization. And for me, this was like, oh, what she's saying for the first time. I learned lots of things about it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to more courses as well now.
Okay, but you haven't answered my question, right? So you told me why you did an MBA, either because you were pushed aside or because you thought there was a good passport for transformation. But my question is not why, is the what. We look at the why in a while, right?
Okay.
What is an MBA? Beyond the obvious. What is an MBA? Masters of Business Administration. And if you're going to respond, you don't know what you're signing yourself for. Anybody, guys, even prospect, what is an MBA? Be shy. If you're here, that means that you already know what an MBA is. What is an MBA? You're nodding there. What do you think it is? What's your name?
Myrna.
Myrna, what is an MBA?
I would say it's like an top up for business programs, but like in general. So of course it's the Masters of Business Administration, but oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Yeah, I think it's like
No, you're in the right track completely.
okay, perfect. So it's basically a top up or like a general greater idea and more details, I would say, into how like the business world operates in general.
Okay. Anything to add to what Myrna, was it? To what Myrna said? Anybody? Anything else to add?
I think also to transform you to a manager or a leader who can make strategic decisions rather than operational or integrated decisions. And MBA, in complete MBA, you are a different person. You have the confidence, you have the ability to make decisions, and of course, the knowledge. So that is a transformation personally.
Yeah.
So that's MBA.
Yeah. But notice everybody. What's in common between what Myrna and what was your name again? And Sudiva said. Okay. It was to do with that generality, that broadness of what an MBA is about. The MBA is the Master of Business Administration. Is a broad, is a generic business and management qualification. And when I say broad, when I say generic, I don't actually mean it in any pejorative sense whatsoever. Quite the opposite. So all of you, absolutely each and every one of you, already come with some area of specialism. You guys are all experts, either as engineers, as financial managers, you were talking about a bit earlier, as project managers, you might be working in IT, you might be working in the military. We have plenty of people, increasingly, that come from the medical profession, people that come from healthcare, with people that come from shipping. We have actually lots of people that are professional sports people. So you name it, every single walk of life is attracted to an MBA. And it is because it's a very broad, it's a very general business and management qualification. Rather than giving you any expertise on any very specific area of business or management, the MBA is actually making you a generalist. Remember when he was speaking about strategy, that's exactly what we're trying to look at. It tries to look at the big picture. It tries to take that helicopter view that allows you to look at the organization from above, to look at what is the interplay, what are the tensions, what are the benefits, what are the synergies that happen between different functional areas. It's not about you guys being a good marketer. It's not about you guys being good in finance. It's not about you guys being very efficient as you actually look at, for example, decisions and operations management. It's about looking at the big picture. It's about looking at how you look at all those different silos from a more cohesive, from a more comprehensive way. So usually the MBA will attract people that already come from this area, that are actually looking at not selling themselves within their employers or potentially with employers as more expert. They have already that expertise. They have it on paper and they have it in their hands as well. But instead, they're actually just trying to sell themselves as somebody that can actually look at that big picture, that understands what happens within the organization. So it's quite common the case that we have a typical example of an engineer that comes to do an MBA, an engineer that has actually made it quite high up in the organization, to a certain extent, that he can actually be managing a rather large team of individuals, usually quite technical, but that just wants to perhaps convince the organization that they can take more commercial roles, they can take more synthetic roles, that they can actually perhaps look at the organization as a holistic entity as opposed to just a very, very small silo within the organization. And to do so, what they need to get is a bit of an understanding of how a business works. So they need, that's very, very important. They need to understand how each one of those departments, how each one of those functions that we tend to look at in every single organization works. So what is marketing about? What is operations management about? what is finance about, the accounting function or HR, or how we go about looking at how organization design, organizational culture can affect performance. So it actually teaches you how things work within the organization, what every single department does. It will not make you an expert in marketing, it will not make you an expert in finance whatsoever, but it'll give you those ingredients to understand what everybody within those functions, everybody in those departments do. It'll allow you to understand the language that each one of those functions or departments are actually speaking, and then it will bring absolutely everything together in the form of a strategy course. Usually a strategy course tends to happen halfway through the MBA once we've covered all those foundations of business. In our case, we call it strategy and competition. Other MBAs might be calling it strategy or strategic management. Okay? And it's only then that Mira was actually saying you get into perhaps more detail about very specific areas. So you tailor your journey through the choice of electives or the capstone project that you might be wanting to do, and so on. Okay, so that's in general terms what an MBA is about. So rather than making you more specialist on anything, quite the opposite, it takes you away from that very specialist, right? That's already given for granted. However, the MBA is not only looking at business, it's also looking at management. And management can be defined in many, many different ways. It could be management of people, it could be management of projects, it could be management of budgets, it could be management really of anything. The MBA will actually give you the skills that you require to manage. And more than the very, very specific skills in terms of time management, so we'll put you under pressure typically if you come to a workshop. So for those alumni or you in your first semester, you well know now that you come for 3 days typically. We give you a brief on the very first day, and by the third day, you need to do a presentation. You hardly have any time, and you need to make it work. You need to make sure that you can actually get a team to complete a particular task when everybody comes from a different walk of life, a different nationality, and when everybody actually thinks about that particular problem in a different way. Sometimes you're going to have plenty of clashes, you're going to have a lot of conflicts that will indeed need to be somehow resolved because you need that delivery at the end of the day. And you might be a CEO, or you might be a very, very senior managing director within an organization. However, when you do the MBA, you might be working with somebody that is way more junior than you. Yet, there's no hierarchy. Everybody is exactly the same level playing field. How do you manage those conflicts, those clashes, those different ways of looking at the world? That's actually one of the most difficult parts of the MBA, right? And it can actually lead to conflict. It can actually lead to a lot of frustration. Yet, it's usually possibly the part of the MBA that we learn the most on. Project management, time management, so on. However, in my opinion, there are, I would say, 5 specific areas that the MBA will equip you from a rather soft skills perspective on. The MBA will tend to make sure that you can actually try to develop your communication skills, your collaboration skills. It will also get you to be a better critical thinker. It will also teach you about creativity. And most importantly, again, exactly the word that he used, it will make you more confident. Let me very, very briefly speak about each one of these, I call it 5 C's. Remember, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and confidence. So communication. How do we go about developing your communication skills in the MBA? Might well be that we put you to present in public quite often, basically at every single workshop. And now, due to the demands of a post-pandemic world, you might be doing it from time to time as well online. And there's a particular skill set that needs to be learned to be able to present effectively, using a specific etiquette as well, to be able to present properly, smoothly, and professionally when you do it on Zoom, when you do it on Teams, or whatnot. Yeah, it's about presentation skills. is about being able to communicate and articulate your argumentation in a written format, without saying. It's also perhaps about, from a more careers perspective, being able to prepare your own elevator pitch. So how do you sell yourself? How do you tell others what you actually do in the space of 10 or 15 seconds when you don't have the time to tell them exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis, or reading a paper like Joseph did for 5 minutes about me, right? How do you do that? How do you tell people very quickly what you do and make sure that they have a good understanding and that you're at the same time selling yourself? Or how do you actually develop the skills of doing simple chit chat in a networking event? Sure, it's difficult sometimes to start chatting to people you don't know, trying to find some common ground to be able to chat with them, isn't it? How do you go about that? How do you negotiate? How do you bid? How do you even negotiate your own salaries? The type of things that you actually learn as part of an MBA. Sometimes explicitly because it's an intended learning outcome, but sometimes perhaps a bit more implicitly because it's simply embedded into the things that we actually make you do as part of an operations course, or a finance course, or a strategic management course. Okay. Second one I spoke about was collaboration. We speak about collaboration, we speak about how we actually go about working with others. I've already mentioned that very, very, very central to our MBA programs, and that's all our MBA programs. That's our full-time MBA, our global MBA, our global executive MBA, all of them. We have a lot of group work. As I said, group work is actually not easy. Group work is actually quite difficult to manage. Some of the messiest issues I have to solve in my role are angry students that complain about others freeloading or not agreeing with what somebody has actually said during a workshop, and having all the pressure of having to deliver that particular workshop, deliver that presentation in the space of 2 evenings when there's a clash of personalities. How do you manage that? Well, guys, perhaps it's up to you to realize that in the absence of a hierarchy, in the absence of being able to say, right, let's try to be as consensual as we can. Let's try to be goody-goody about everything and say, oh, let's all agree on our structure, on what we'll actually say. Or perhaps it's about realizing that sometimes when there's starting to be conflict, when there's starting to be a difference in between the opinions that you have and those of everybody else in the team, perhaps in the interest of time, you cannot entertain every single view, or you cannot make sure that you can bring everybody in your team to the exact same way as yours. How can you manage that? Perhaps with persuasion. So the more persuasive you are, the stronger the narrative you will create, the better. Or it might well be that at the very beginning of that particular presentation, that briefing that's given to you a couple of days before you actually are due to present, you realize that perhaps having a hierarchy is a lot more effective, and it will allow you to make those decisions a lot faster. So you can say, look, we can be as consensual, we can be as democratic as possible, but we just don't have the liberty of spending 10 hours discussing what's going to be the scope of our presentation. We need to move in 30 minutes, because then we need to move on, do that research, prepare our slides, and do some mock presentations. So who's going to be the arbiter when there's conflict? How are you going to manage that situation when some students are going to be saying something, some other students are going to be having a totally different opinion, and you need to move on at some point? Perhaps you just reserve yourself the right of saying, look, you're going to be ultimately the arbiter in that presentation. If we don't, by 30 minutes, we get that person to decide what approach we actually take. And even if there is dissent, even if the whole group doesn't agree on that particular standpoint, we need to move on. Perhaps about being effective. Those are the type of things that you actually learn when we look at cooperating with others. Perhaps cooperation would even be understood in today's world, as well from a financing perspective. We have plenty of MBAs, for instance, that have ended up eventually setting up their own business. We have plenty of vicious individuals that tend to come to the MBA. You work quite closely with them for a reasonable lengthy period of time, usually around a year and a half or 2 years, you get to know them quite well. And you say, you know what, I want to serve a business with this particular individual, quite like-minded, right? How do you go about cooperating? How do you go about perhaps even raising new finance to fund your new business venture? All those things are incredibly important when it comes to cooperation. Creativity. It's about looking outside the box, trying to do all those things that computer and algorithms will never be able to do. Fair enough, it's artificial intelligence, AI, and all the developments. But there's loads of things, at least for now, that computers are already able to do. Whether that is coming up with a new product, whether that is coming up, we just mentioned, with a new business venture, or whether it is trying to perhaps set a new strategy or a new strategic approach within the organization. That's incredibly important. All that is creativity. Critical thinking, that perhaps is the more scholarly or the more academic of all the skills that you actually gain to master of business administration. Critical thinking is about basically taking a rather critical view that takes into account all different perspectives. In other words, it's about looking at a theory, a framework, a model, whatever it may be, looking at what's good about it, what are its problems, so perhaps the limitations provided by assumptions that don't hold true in the real world, how does it apply to the real world, or how it doesn't, and certainly as well, being able to discern what is it that theory, that framework, that model will give you to better understand the real world. Lots of times, many business practitioners think, all right, why do we need to sit in a class? Sure, I'm a very seasoned manager. I've been practicing business for 30, 40 years. Nobody should tell me, well, hang on a second. It's not only about speaking in common language, but perhaps about the methodological approach of looking at the world in a very, very specific, very critical way that will allow you to, again, look at the problem from many, many different perspectives. It's about relying on evidence. It's about relying perhaps on quantitative measures to make a decision. It's about perhaps relying on reason. But it's about, in essence, not using your intuition simply to make decisions. And intuition can be very good as well. But when we look at critical thinking, we're actually trying to basically bring a bit from absolutely every single pie, put them all in the mix, then just try to take that balancing act and look at why we decide to go for a specific approach, for a specific strategy, for a specific course of action, as opposed to alternatives. Okay? So spoken about communication, collaboration or cooperation, however you want to call it, creativity, critical thinking. The last one, and arguably, in my opinion, the most important one, is confidence. And confidence, perhaps not based necessarily on that traditional sense of confidence as in being self-assured in your own abilities. In other words, a confident person that can stand in front of 500 people and start cracking up jokes to an audience and really cocky. No, it's not confidence necessarily in that traditional sense, but perhaps more so is confidence in that we're looking at our ability to rely perhaps on others, or our ability to rely on the future prospects of something happening. In other words, being positive, being optimistic, being confident about the future is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly easy nowadays to be pessimistic, to take a negative view of things. COVID, war in Ukraine, or special operation, however they call it now, or it might well be global warming, or it might well be the rise in the cost of living. It might well be that there's geopolitical instability. Obviously, over in Manchester, the UK might be Brexit. It is so easy to be pessimistic and to fear the future. But guys, yes, whilst there might be a lot of uncertainty, there might be a lot of change, there's also a lot of opportunity in change. a lot of it. If you look at the Steve Jobs, if you look at the I don't know, top managers that might have actually really shaped the way you look at the world or how you actually assess success. It's usually people that made their money, that made the mark, because they actually went against the current. It was people that actually made the most of a very uncertain, a very, very dynamic world. There were people, in other words, that were making the most out of uncertainty. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of it in uncertainty, a lot of it. And it's very, very little use to be confident, to rely on your own self-assurance, those abilities we're speaking about. So that cockiness or that ability to stand in front of 500 people cracking up jokes. There's very, 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 very little use of being self-assured in your own abilities when cynicism, when pessimism gets on the way. Sure, you won't be able to avail of any of those opportunities. So the most important thing is understanding that there is a lot of opportunity to change, that you need to be confident about the future, that you need to take the world and its change in a very, very, very positive limelight. And this is exactly the type of environment we want to create in an MBA. One where we open up a platform for you guys to be excited about change. You guys being excited about the opportunities that come about with that change, with that very, very dynamic environment. This is really what we're actually trying to create, and for you to avail of it. There's no coincidence that I was actually looking recently at. I'm gonna move here because I don't know if the people.
They can see you.
Oh, they can see me.
Be a bit closer
Perhaps
to the
not so
mic.
great. Because I need to confess, I actually went to our offices today with the intention of coming back to the hotel and at least putting a shirt for today's event, only to realize that it was actually quite late. I said, well, the traffic here in Dubai is actually not so good. Let's just go to the event just to be the safe side. So my apologies for not even wearing a shirt. So guys, if you cannot see me from there, nearly better, right? Anyway, guys. As I said, there was this survey that I was reading about, actually not too long ago, but from GMAC. I think GMAC stands for the Graduate Management and Admissions Council. It was actually asking MBA graduates what was it that they actually got out of an MBA. There was loads of attributes that they were actually speaking about, and they would provide gives me more business acumen, or it gives me better communication skills, it makes me a better team player, it gets me to learn about finance, it gets me to learn about operations, it provided me with a new networking platform, the most common one. And that applied both to people who were doing MBAs, both on a full-time and on a part-time basis, most consistently attributed benefit of the MBA as graduates was actually confidence. Right? Interestingly enough, hardly anybody at your stage, so when people are trying to look at whether or not to do an MBA, or indeed for people that are starting an MBA, hardly anybody tells me that they want to do an MBA because they want to become more confident. Right? Few people might mention it here and there. You mentioned it, obviously. But people tell me, well, I want to do an MBA because I want to get a better job, or because I want to understand business better, or because I want to have 3 letters after my name. Whatever their motivation for doing an MBA. Not many people tend to mention confidence yet. Vast majority of people mention that one of the key takeaways from the MBA once they complete it is confidence. Very, very, very important. Okay. I'm going to stop here. Just wanted to give you a bit of a sense of what an MBA is about. I'm just going to be opening up to any questions that you or anybody attending remotely might actually have.
How is it actually assessed in terms of, like, do we get a merit or whatever at the end, or just on each kind of module? How does that work?
Right. So there's it's quite complex. Obviously, you are assessed at different levels, and then depending on your performance throughout the course, in other words, throughout the whole MBA, then you will actually receive an MBA award that will differ depending on how well you perform. So you're obviously being assessed. Typically, the vast majority of modules, of course, units as we call them, they're assessed usually twice. So usually you are assessed in the form of group work through those presentations I spoke about during the workshops. And then at the end of the semester, at the end of the module, you will also have to typically do some form of individual assessment. Notice I'm saying individual assessment because it might be an essay, it might be a video that you have to present, it might be a reflective piece. It could be really anything. It has to be quite applied. So even though we will actually ask you to refer to different models, theories, frameworks that we have presented throughout the modules, and we want you to critically evaluate. At the end of the day, you guys are all working professionals. You guys come with a lot of experience. And what we want you is to understand how those theories and frameworks can actually contribute to you being more effective in your role or within your organization. Okay? So those 2 units of assessment, typically the workshop presentation which you do as part of the group might be, or maybe around 40 or 50% of the mark for that module, and then the final individual assessment will be anywhere between 50 and 60%. We tend to weigh the individual bits just a wee bit more. Your final projects are always going to be group work, right? And then depending on the marks that you actually receive for each one of those units, calculate the GPA, or weighted average, and that will determine whether you get an MBA with pass, whether you get an MBA with merit or an MBA with distinction. Okay. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes lots of people tell us about, oh, marks, and I want to feel this mark, or I don't agree, I would like 1 mark more. Guys, I'm still to hear of an employer that actually asks an MBA graduate what award they receive. By that I mean whether it was a pass, a merit, or distinction. Usually they will actually ask them, do you have an MBA or don't you? And if you got an MBA, what institution from? Maybe yes, for full-time MBAs going into consultancy houses like McKinsey or Bain or whatever. It's so hyper competitive that they might actually be asking for a final award classification. But again, that would be perhaps with full-time MBA and very specific niche industries. I've never heard of other employers asking. Is Hiba here? Hiba, you might correct me here. Hiba obviously looks after careers here. I'm not sure whether it would be different in the context of the Middle East. Would employers here be looking for award classifications as well, whether your MBA is with distinction or merit or not?
Actually, no. They wouldn't.
Right. That's what I suspected.
Yeah, no, it's no different. But again, they look for the skill set, they look for MBA, especially if you're looking to move into consulting companies. These certainly look for candidates who have an MBA. And we do get approached by some of these, especially the top 4, big 4 companies who come to us and they seek candidates with an MBA who started, graduated at different levels. So definitely, if you're considering into changing your career, moving into consulting, you would need an MBA. And if you're considering into changing your jobs, moving into more senior leadership positions, shifting, pivoting into different industry, again, an MBA is going to help you because of the skill set that you gain, because of the knowledge, the expertise, understanding how, let's say, operations work, marketing, finance. And in addition to the electives that we have, these help kind of personalize and focus your MBA within the pathway that you're looking to move in. So if you want to have any career discussion, I'm here available after we finish this.
Thanks, Hiba. Any other questions?
I have a question. You have a number of campuses. Is there an opportunity to engage those campuses as well, workshops, classes, to kind of expand your network?
Absolutely.
Markets.
Absolutely.
As a global MBA, that might be an asset.
Absolutely. So obviously, our main headquarters are in Manchester, which in itself also acts as what we call a regional center for the Global MBA, in that we still receive part-time MBA students that come over to take workshop residentials every January, every March, April, and every September or October. In most exact same, and July as well. Much the same way as you would here in Dubai. And then we have obviously centers in Dubai, we have a center in Shanghai, and in Hong Kong, and in Singapore as well. Okay, so usually what happens is that we tend to leverage those centers incredibly well. It's one of our key selling points. I was actually discussing this with the team a bit earlier on. And I was saying, well, we were speaking about our USPs. And they said, was our USP the fact that we are blended? Certainly. So it's the fact that you come over and the vast majority of the workshops tend to be around 3 days, will amount to around 24, 25 hours of teaching per module, right? But yet that we concentrated in 3 days to make it workable for part-time, right? But at the same time, I was actually also discussing with them, but one of our key USPs is also the fact, not only that it's blended, but also the fact that we actually have presence at those international centers. So I could easily just send our academics, decamp them in a hotel for around 3 days, whatever that might be, and deliver, and then just fly them back to Manchester, as we do. We actually operate the flying faculty model. However, it's the fact that we have presence here, that we have the HIVAs, for example, that are providing you with careers advice in the context of the Middle East, and likewise as well in China, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and so on, that we are actually engaging our alumni community so that we can actually have more networking events in between the workshop residentials, and that you can really always go and study at our library and our premise and so on. That is, in my opinion, one of our key USPs. So for the Global MBA, usually what would happen is for the core units, that is your first year, you will be staying in your home center. So if you are a resident here in Dubai or in the GCC region, or actually the MENA region, if you're Northern Africa as well, you will be registered formally with the Dubai Center. You would take all your workshops here in Dubai. And then at the elective stage, we would actually not only allow you, but encourage you to take electives at one of our international centers, may that be Manchester, Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, wherever you want. Now, of course, you might well decide to take them here if you want to minimize the amount of time away from work because you don't want to fly for whatever reasons, right? But we will encourage you to go abroad and take them away from your home center, to the extent that we'll even pay for up to 6 nights accommodation if you actually take electives abroad. Then we have the Global Executive MBA program, which is slightly different. The Global Executive MBA program, what we're doing is we're actually bringing a very small cohort of somewhere between 20 and 30 students from around the world, right? So we're actually recruiting into this cohort from all over the world to ensure that it's as diverse as possible. And to ensure that this is the case, we make them travel around the world. So we dictate the locations where they take the workshops. So for those who start the Mba program in July, they come to Manchester first. Then they go to Singapore in September. Then they actually take the workshop residential here in Dubai in March, April time next year, before they come back to Manchester again to do their introduction to their capstone project and strategy and competition. And then they take electives anywhere they want around the world. So the difference here between the global and the Mba is that the global, you take your core courses in your home center and then you travel. And in Mba, it's pretty much the opposite. You actually go around the world, but we dictate where you're actually going as a close cohort. And we even put you up in the exact same hotel so that you build that connection with everybody. And we're going to be making you work quite late into the night. So that's one of the reasons why we sneakily put you all in the same hotel. So there's no excuses to be leaving, right? And then electives, you can take them pretty much whatever you want, right? So yes, plenty of opportunity to leverage from our centers.
And you have, sorry, 3 electives, right?
In the Global MBA, you
Global
have
MBA,
3 electives, and in the Global Executive MBA, you have 2 electives.
Oh, okay.
Okay. However, once you complete the MBA, you can also take what we call post-completion elective. Yeah. So basically, after you complete the MBA, we allow you to take 1 additional elective.
Oh.
So in very, very old versions of the program, so obviously those alumni that are now teaching assistants that would have done it. Perhaps not you, because you started in 2008, I think you told me, yeah? 2018, yeah.
17, yeah.
When did you start your MBA?
12.
In 12. So your MBA was 3 years long at the time, wasn't it?
Those were my.
So you possibly had around 4 or 5 electives. 4 or 5 electives at the time. So obviously when we relaunched the program as a 2-year program back in 2017, that's what I'm saying, you would have been in this same permutation of the program, really. So we said, well, the fact that we're doing it in 2 years, 3 electives, that's great, you can get your MBA faster. But you will see that when we have around 24, 25 electives at any one time, and electives tend to be incredibly interesting. People tend to want to do more and more electives. So for us, it was a win-win. Our students wanted more, but we also use them opportunistically as a hook, because the more we can actually get you to engage with us once you complete the MBA, the closer you will be to our alumni community, the more you will continue to engage with us on whatever way it might be, either through alumni events, such as networking, as speakers, and so on. Again, one of our key USPs, as I said, is the fact that we have presence locally, but our presence is only valuable to the extent that we can actually leverage it. It's incredibly important that we create very strong networks, and alumni are incredibly crucial in this networking. So what do we do with this CPD elective that we offer you? It's a hook. We make sure that we don't let you go in many ways. So it's a bit of a win-win for everyone.
So just to follow on, can you explain to me what is the key difference between an executive MBA and global MBA or the traveling?
The name. Executive. Actually, lots of people would think of the global MBA as an executive type MBA. There's in essence no definition of what makes something an executive or a non-executive MBA. Usually executive MBAs tend to be seen as something that is perhaps a bit shorter, that is perhaps a lot more intense, right? This is why we use the opportunity of calling our global executive MBA executive, because it's actually shortened into 18 months. But the key differences here are that the global MBA is one where we actually recruit usually up to around, here in Dubai, is it around 70, 80 students per semester. So for example, in the UK, we might be looking at similar numbers as well. Then we have our own centers in Shanghai, sorry, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and Shanghai, that might be looking at anywhere between 50 and 70 students as well. Okay? And what we do is we actually put you in workshops of up to 30 people. So the workshops themselves tend to be incredibly applied. By that I mean the academics might be doing a bit of lecturing, all right, but it tends to be kept to a reasonable small amount. So much of the learning happens before you come to the workshop. In your own time, you have to do plenty of reading, and you have online lectures, you have virtual office hours, and you have to basically do a lot of self-study. What we do at the workshop is we actually use that as an opportunity to basically consolidate that knowledge, contextualize it, and get you to debate a lot. We as academics then tend to spend quite a bit of time, perhaps not so much lecturing, but perhaps being mediators in discussion, in debate, facilitators basically. So you guys are incredibly senior in your own respective fields. And we actually then take that as an opportunity to make sure that we actually draw as much as possible from you in terms of discussion, so that you guys can learn you guys really can learn from each other. So those doing the global MBA typically would be divided into either 2 or 3 workshops in that particular area, because we'll never put too many students inside a class, right? Now, in the case of the global executive MBA, Mba, that's slightly different. In Mba, we still keep you in a class maximum 30 students. However, we keep you really contained. It's what we called a closed cohort. in that we're actually recruiting Gembas all over the world into that specific cohort. So usually when we recruit to the Global MBA in this region, most of the people that will actually be taking workshops here in our center in Dubai will be people from the MENA region. Whereas in the Global Executive MBA, we've recruited from all over the world. But the fact that we've recruited from all over the world then dictates that we're going to have to be delivering those workshops all over the world. And we want to basically divide the amount of time that we give to different regions in the world. Usually, in the Global Executive MBA, we're looking at people that are at quite senior level. So we're looking at people usually that are already at board level, or perhaps people that are nearing board level, or incredibly aspirational people. So people that have climbed up, progressing their careers incredibly fast. Right? Our average age, I think I was just saying to somebody, I don't know, it was you or you were earlier, our average age in Geneva is around 42, 43. The Global MBA, we still get a lot of very senior people. However, we're actually not looking at people necessarily that are already at a C-suite level, but we're actually looking perhaps at a wider audience. So we have people that might be typically in their early 30s, and we have people up to the age of 60, so a lot of variety, but our average age would be around 35, 36. Okay. Key difference then in the Gemba is a close cohort. You're traveling, as I said, around the world. So you go to Manchester first, then you go to Singapore, then you go to Dubai, then you come back to Manchester and the electives wherever you want. But we're keeping that very close cohort. In the Global MBA, perhaps there's a bit more flexibility. In other words, you can basically dip in and out at different workshops and pretty much stay at home if you are incredibly busy. So you actually have to look at that trade-off, whether you want basically a super senior cohort against the fact that it's a bit less flexible. Another benefit of it is that it's 18 months as opposed to 2 years. But what I see, for example, as a benefit might be something that is perhaps a disadvantage for somebody else that might say, no, I actually don't want to do my MBA in 18 months. It's too intense. So we call it executive. I want to slow it down a bit because I'm really busy at home or at work. Okay.
Just one more question. Can you give me a couple of examples on electives?
Yeah, anything from strategic financial analysis, international business strategy, advanced strategic management. We've done quite a bit lately on digital. So, example, at the moment, we have an elective on the digital economy. We have another one ecosystem on ecosystem platform strategy, another one managing disruptive technology. We have another one on digital marketing. So we've been placing our focus on digital and on technology, information systems, and digital strategy. But then we have electives, perhaps a bit more traditional, along the lines of supply chain management, negotiation skills, which is one of our most popular ones, of entrepreneurship and innovation management, which many students tend to take alongside venture capital and private equity. So on the one hand, you're looking at the generation of ideas and new business ventures, and on the other hand, you're actually looking at how you go about financing them. Those are people that take those two hand in hand. We just launched another one on work psychology for business success. So we're actually looking about concepts, anything ranging from emotional intelligence and how managers actually use it to their own advantage, to looking at how we go about managing our career, perhaps in a more systematic and scholarly way. We will be launching next semester a new elective that is actually looking at the effect that corporate events have on shareholder value. So, for example, how specific big announcements may actually change shareholder value or share prices or mergers and acquisitions and all that side of things. So that one we have not launched. We're actually launching it next September. We'll see how it goes. In essence, we have around 24, 25 electives. Again, you name the area, you possibly have it.
So if you choose 3, right? So
In the Global MBA, you choose 3, yes, and then you have the ability to take another post-completion elective once you finish your MBA. That's right. All right, great. Xavier, before we end this fantastic night, I would like to invite our alumni here. They're here tonight. If we could probably hear from them a few motivational words about their experience. If I may call Ijaz is here, Jaffer is here, and Zahi. You can just come over here, guys, just to, yeah, please. The more the merrier. Yeah, just like, all right. If you can introduce yourself to our guest tonight, please.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Zahir. I'm an alumni since 2015. Plus 3 years now. Fortunately now it's less. I'm a country manager in General Motors. Allow me to share my story in 1 minute. The MBA started 2012 as an opportunity. I wanted to change, I wanted to grow, I wanted to learn something else, change career. This is the start. But during the course, it's shifted to advanced learning. Learning not only from the tutor, from each others, from the students, because you meet a lot of people from different nationalities, from different backgrounds, from different countries, from different senior levels. We used to learn from each other, not only from the tutor. So I learned that I'm not always right. There was a lot of management during the course, managing conflicts, managing time, managing expectation, managing people. There was extremely nice management learning. I went to Shanghai with the electives. I went to UK with the electives. I met a lot of people. At the end of the course, as Xavier said, it was about confidence. It was about capabilities. I was able to see things from a wider perspective. I was able to take better decisions. And I thought that at the end of the course, I got my MBA, that's the end. Actually not. The opportunity is still there until this moment, because we have a very wide network of alumni, senior people from different businesses who are still doing business with each other until this moment. So it's worth it. Between you and yourself, at the end of the day, you will know better. That's it.
Thank you, Zai. Thank you. Ijaz, please.
My name is Ijaz Anwar, and
If you can be that side, Ijaz, so
Okay.
the audience on this online can see you.
You get the moon projected.
I didn't hear you. So I started my MBA in 2018, and I completed in 2020. This was much later in my life cycle, and I did it precisely for the wrong reason that you mentioned. I wanted to gain more confidence. I had been working for almost 30 years in sales, marketing, management. I thought I knew everything, or at least I thought. When I joined the MBA, the first lesson I learned about the courses was about a Baumol type and a value type, management styles. And I realized, oh, I've been making these mistakes for so many years, never realizing this. So even after 30 years of work experience at a senior level, I was a general manager for many, many years. I learned a lot more to apply. When I went back to work, I changed my style. I changed my management style. Of course, whatever Zahi mentioned, you get opportunity to travel. I went to Manchester for a workshop, very good. I wanted to go to Brazil for my social entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, it was COVID times, we couldn't, but I took that course. And even that course totally changed the perspective of our social entrepreneurship. People think it's very easy, or it's something very simple. It is not. Especially if your professor is somebody who lives, works, and does the same thing in Brazil. It's a totally different world out there. He was able to share experiences right from the press, he was in that place. Place here, I did it in Dubai. So most of the workshops were here. It was an amazing experience, believe me. There are people here, there's staff here, program officers. Amna still there? She's gone out, okay. they really help you so much. They make you feel confident. You gain confidence, of course, but again, then your professors and your staff are very, very supportive. I didn't think I would be able to do it, but I did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Jaffer?
My name is Jaffer. I did mine in 2000, started mine in 2017, finished in 2019, graduated. My background is I had two businesses I ran in the UK many years before I moved out to the UAE. So I came from an entrepreneur background with a bit of tech focus, and running my own companies, expanding globally. You're very busy, you're doing lots of things, but I always felt something was missing, and I needed to put some sort of accreditation on my experience of things I'd achieved with building my business. I looked around many different MBAs, and looking at the Manchester MBA, speaking to the staff and the Dubai staff, amazing in terms of understanding the difference it would make to me. I started the course, and I feel that what I gained out of it was not necessarily accreditation for experience I already had over the many years of entrepreneurship I've done. I learned so many new things. I gained confidence in the way I approach business, what I was doing, but I also realized there's so many things I didn't. My electives were venture capital, private equity. So many things, mistakes I'd made that that made a difference. Once I looked at that elective, I thought, okay, this is where I could have done things better. Negotiation skills, which obviously affects you in many different areas in all aspects of work and business. So for me, completing my MBA has allowed me to look at a problem, find strategic solution, and deliver with confidence. That's what I feel it allows me to do, having done an MBA, and do it with confidence. So I've spoken to some of you already here earlier, and I certainly want to give all of you, with any doubts whether this is the right program for you or not, this is the right place to be. The alumni are strong, the staff that will support you in this center are strong, and you're going to be part of a great MBA and as part of the University of Manchester. Thank you so much.
Let's give them a round of applause. All right. You can save your questions later on. They're going to be outside for a little snack with you guys, so please don't hesitate to ask them questions. All right, here we go. Xavier Duran, please. I guess we have just one last question before we end the night. Why do you think, Professor, would be the University of Manchester is the better choice in terms of the MBA?
I think I already said some of our key USPs are the fact that our program is a blended program, so it gives you plenty of opportunities to take face-to-face classes as well, in addition to online. And obviously, particularly after the pandemic, it's easy to just say, sure, now I'm used to being in front of a screen for a long time. Guys, nothing beats, particularly when you're actually doing an MBA. Fair enough, you're doing something perhaps more at the more general level. But if you're looking at an MBA where networking is so important, guys, nothing beats the face-to-face element. And then obviously the fact that we actually have presence, not only all over the world, but most importantly to you guys, that we have presence here. And that is not, again, presence that just comes in and out with your workshops. It's presence here, basically, that we support along the way, even in between those workshops.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Xavier Duran.